The role of the HR leader. The HR leader can contribute to risk management in different ways, depending on the situation, the needs of the organization, and the relationships around the executive table. We set this out as a 2x2 matrix based on two things: the depth of risk insight HR contributes, and the extent to which HR shapes how risk strategy is formed. That role is not fixed. It can shift over time, and it can look different from one organization to another. It depends on individual capability, organizational expectations, the needs and cycle time of the business, and the nature of the relationship with the CEO and executive team. And in practice, HR leaders may move between these roles rather than sit in just one place. The first role is subject matter expert. In this role, HR brings a people risk lens into strategic decision-making. That means providing data on employees, demographics, and labor markets, and using that information to help the organization make better decisions. It also means offering expert insight into the people-related exposure already built into business strategy. That might include succession vulnerability in critical roles, the effects of AI-driven skills disruption, or employee relations risk created by inconsistent local practice across jurisdictions. A good example of this role comes from the Bank of England. The bank operates a 3 lines of defense model for enterprise risk. Each quarter, every directorate, including HR, completes a risk control self-assessment. That creates a largely bottom-up picture of risk, combining quantitative people metrics with qualitative judgment. Those assessments are then brought together into an enterprise-level view and reviewed by the Executive Risk Committee. Within that process, HR leaders help sense-check the people risk commentary and contribute to the discussion and deeper dives where needed. So here, HR is adding real value through insight, evidence, and interpretation. The second role is implementer. Here, HR takes business and risk strategy and turns it into practical people interventions. The emphasis is on creating a clear line of sight between strategic priorities and day-to-day activity. HR embeds people risk considerations into roles, processes, and incentives, so that risk mitigation is built into how work happens rather than being handled after problems emerge. Ariva provides a useful example here. The organization works with a unified zero-harm principle, which acts as a single organizing logic for how risk is understood and acted on across the business. Zero harm does not assume that accidents can never happen. Instead, it rejects the idea that harm is simply inevitable. HR supports this by running a culture survey across 35,000 employees to understand lived safety conditions, and by designing bespoke practice-based leadership programs to embed that mindset across the workforce. The approach is also treated as ongoing and iterative, with the logic refined as the organizational context and risk exposure change. This is HR helping to translate a strategic principle into behaviors, leadership practice, and everyday reality. The third role is facilitator. In this role, HR helps shape how risk strategy is developed. It convenes and structures discussions on people-related risk, making sure these considerations are part of the conversation from the outset. It also plays a deliberate challenge role, testing executive assumptions by looking at how strategic initiatives are likely to play out across the workforce in practice. Hostinger illustrates this clearly. HR facilitates cross-functional AI and automation guilds and squads, bringing together specialists from across departments. It also applies learning and development expertise to design collaboration and learning formats that support rapid experimentation while surfacing people and capability implications. The Guild creates a forum where tensions can be worked through openly, including the tension between leadership pressure for speed and the need for cybersecurity controls. Rather than trying to resolve those trade-offs within HR alone, the process enables shared dialogue about how to balance innovation and risk in practice. That is a good example of HR not just contributing content, but shaping the quality of the conversation. The fourth role is full contributor. This is where HR contributes to enterprise risk strategy on an equal footing with other executives. HR is not simply responding to decisions at this point. It is helping to shape them. It brings strategic perspectives on risk by translating insight about the workforce, the operating model, and the market context into enterprise-level exposure and opportunity. One case shows this in a very direct way. In a telecommunications organization, during post-acquisition integration, a payroll system failure happened just days before the first payday. That meant thousands of employees were at risk of not being paid. Because payroll sat closest to HR's functional responsibility, the HR director became the executive lead for the crisis, underwriting decisions about impact and response. HR owned supplier relationships and led judgments on continuity measures, working closely with technology and communications rather than deferring to them. This is a strong example of HR acting not as a support function on the sidelines, but as a full enterprise contributor, taking accountability in a high-stakes moment. Taken together, these four roles show that the contribution of the HR leader to risk management is broader and more flexible than it is sometimes assumed to be. In some situations, HR's value lies in the quality of its specialist insight. In others, it lies in translating strategy into practical action. Sometimes it is about structuring the conversation well and challenging assumptions. And sometimes it is about stepping fully into enterprise leadership and shaping the organization's response at the highest level. The important point is that no single role is always the right one. The role HR plays will depend on the issue at hand, the context of the organization, and the expectations around the executive table. But across all four positions, the underlying contribution is the same: helping the organization understand people-related risk more clearly, respond more effectively, and build resilience over time. You can view the full report by scanning the QR code on the screen.